This section 13.9 on what an offense needs to attack a defense. I want to give you food for thought on the 2-minute drive or the last 3 plays. And what I mean is you have the ball, it's the final drive, and you either have 2 minutes or less, meaning these last 3 plays could be under a minute that you have to score to win the game. And what are the things that we should consider with regard to what we want to do in that situation? The first thing to consider is whether you're going to call those plays or you want to already have established a series of plays that you will use in that scenario, and everybody knows it. The other coaches know it, the players know it. And what that means is, do you want to trust your ability to call the perfect play in those scenarios, in the perfect sequences, or do you want to have a series of plays that you practice in these 2-minute drives and these last 3 plays that the players know exactly what to do and they can go out execute their opponent? I have chosen the latter with regard to the fact that I've learned in these situations that it's better to trust the players and allow them to go out and execute their play successfully against the defense. And they can do that with confidence and assurance. They don't have to look to the sideline. They don't have to wonder what play is next. Because when you do that, there's always a time factor that takes time for you to call it, for the players to hear it, for the players to process what the play is. So I called this series for us Rangers, obviously the attachment to Army Rangers, who are the highest level of people that go in when things are crucial in order to get the job done. And so we would call it Rangers, and we would use that as our last 3 plays or 2-minute drive. So the first thing I had to decide is what formation would I use. And as you'll see here, these are my last 3 plays. And you'll notice that they're all pass plays. So you might be wondering, well, what happens if it's 3rd and 1? Are you going to throw a pass? And the thing that I've chosen is, I've chosen an empty formation. And you'll know that if you've listened to me talk before on other videos, that I'm a big fan of the empty formation for a lot of reasons. But one reason in this scenario is that when you're in empty, okay, and in this case, I put 3 different coverages here, but they all have the same front. There's 4 down linemen. So what I have experienced has happened in empty is that when they rush 4, you have 5 to block them, and typically they will rush the 4, and they'll use that Mike linebacker in coverage or some other way. Then your quarterback becomes a runner. In other words, these 4 run up the field, we've got them blocked. If they vacate this second level like you're looking at here, he can take off and run. So we've made the quarterback an effective runner regardless of his athletic ability. So when it's 3rd and 1, even if it's 1st and 10, I would tell the quarterback in this scenario, look, if you drop back to pass and you see open area inside that tackle box, you feel free to take off and you feel free to get whatever yardage you can with regard to that. He also has the freedom, if one of these 5 techniques were to come inside and everybody on the perimeter has vacated because they're playing man or they're matched up with their route responsibility, he can take off outside and do the same thing. So by picking empty, I do have a runner, and that's the quarterback, okay? The other thing is empty gives you an easy cover read. And these are my 3 plays. I call my pass plays by numbers, so they knew that when we went in Rangers, we would be in empty, and then I would determine beforehand whether the trips would always go to the field or they would just stay on the right side. If I had 2 minutes left, then I would have the trips flip to the field. And they knew this, and they could get there immediately, because as soon as the ball's caught, or as soon as the whistle is blown and the ball's down, they would start going over to the field side, and the X and the A would go to the boundary side. If it was the last 3 plays, then I would probably just leave them exactly where they are. So if we started that series on the left hash, they just stay on the left hash. Even if we threw a ball over and the ball was placed on the right hash, we just leave them there. So as not to run out time trying to get organized to get them to the other side. If they had time with the official spot on the ball, then we could do that, but typically in the last 3 plays, I'm going to leave them on that side, okay? But what I found is that in regard to coverage, you get an easy read when you're in empty. So let's look at this. This is cover 2, and what we have in cover 2 is I know that when we come up and they're playing cover 2, that the trip side is going to be 3-on-3. So what we've done here is in cover 2, they want to be 3-on-2 onto the boundary to the 2 receiver side. So the free safety, the will, and the corner will play these 2 routes, okay? But over on the trip side, when you're in empty, in a 3-by-2 formation, and you can make this anything you want. You got to have a tight end here, and then 2 wideouts there. But in a trip side against cover 2, you're going to be 3-on-3. So I can teach the quarterback very easily. And I, as a play caller, know that if it's cover 2, he's going to look over here to the trip side because he has a 3-on-3 situation. All right? On the second play, I've drawn cover 3. And what we see in cover 3 is that they would be 4-on-3 to the field. So we know that they're 2-on-2 to the boundary. So we've got the will in the corner playing our X and the A, and they have the Sam, the strong safety who's rotated down, the corner who's rotated back, and the free safety who's rotated to the middle. So we know that in an empty set, in 3-by-2, we're going to work the 2 receiver side. So it's a very simple read for the quarterback in a scenario where we have 3 plays left or we're in a 2-minute drive. He doesn't have to guess what the coverage is. He can come up, look straight down the middle of the field, and if he sees a safety, he knows he's going to work the boundary. If he doesn't see a safety, he knows he's going to work the field. And it's very easy for them to do. I've done that in 6 different high schools with probably 10 different quarterbacks, and they all get that very easily. The last scenario down here, this is cover 1, where there's a safety in the middle, but we now have underneath players all playing man-to-man. You'll see that this is really similar to cover 3. It's just that now the Sam, the strong safety, and the corner are all matched up, and they're up at the line of scrimmage. Could be 4 yards off, playing man-off, or in this case, he could be pressing, but these guys are lined up off the ball, so they can't press them. But we know that they're all playing man-to-man. What I like in this scenario is the fact that I have the A and the B in my system are running backs, or one of them is an extra receiver. So I could have the B be a running back and the A is the extra receiver, or vice versa with regard to that. But in any case, I've got a will linebacker and a Sam linebacker covering 2 guys, whether they're running backs or receivers, that are a mismatch for them. How do I know they're a mismatch? Because I know that people teach the Sam and the will to play the run in the box. And when I go empty, I remove them from the box. So I'm taking away what they've been taught and what they do best, which is to be box players. And I'm matching them up with 2 people, either a receiver and 1 running back, or 2 running backs that have been doing wide receiver drills the whole time. I've mentioned in previous videos that I don't do running back drills. I want my running backs to be viable threats as receivers. So my running backs go into the receiver drills, and they do receiver drills all year round. okay? And you say, well, what about handoffs? We do handoffs and work on handoffs when we do inside run drill. I don't think that's a particularly difficult skill to teach, and I don't think it's a particularly difficult skill for the quarterback to hand the ball off. So I don't waste any time having a period just for handoffs. We can get that done in team time, okay? Or inside run drill. So I have two guys that have run routes. And you think about it, when we're doing receiver drills, we do cone drills, which is route cutting. So they're going to get their cuts in, which enables their feet to get better, because all the receivers need to be able to run routes and get out of break. So we're working on their footwork of receivers and running backs at the same time. But the one thing I know is these guys have run more routes and caught more balls than these guys have defended. So I can come up to them and go, look, if we get in that scenario, you can look at maybe a deep shot, but you look at these two guys and get them the ball and let them do work against the Sam and the Will, because those guys have not covered passes as much, all right? The other part of what we talk about is when we get into this scenario, we want to throw short to deep. I want that quarterback to look at these shallow crossing routes, these hitches, and just to see these out route, the hitch routes, and just to see if we can get the ball out of our hands quickly. All right? We know that in high school, the ball will stop, the clock will stop when we get a first down. So if we can throw and catch these short routes initially and get extra yardage and stop the clock, that makes our drive even more effective and puts even more pressure on the defense. So one of the things I teach in this scenario, our Ranger scenario, is that I ask the quarterback to look short to deep. We don't want to put ourselves in a position of just trying to throw these deep balls and then we're getting these long yardage situations. So the more we can throw and catch in this scenario by going short to deep, then what I found is these guys start leveling off. So if we run the 3 route and we've thrown the shallow cross or the slant and dumped it, then that safety starts to come down. We've thrown this out route to the B or the shallow cross to the A in our 4 route, that everybody starts creeping down a little bit to defend those routes. And that's just kind of human nature on a defender. They want to make tackles, they want to be around the ball. And so when we're throwing these short routes, it starts to open up these deep routes. And so, for example, on this B route, if my quarterback's looking at this arrow route, but he sees the strong safety read, that's an easy throw for him to make and to see with that strong safety left, and he can throw that 12-yard in route, is what we call that, okay? So he can see that in our progression and in our lanes of what we want to throw when he looks short to deep. So that's how we handle this scenario, okay? But our number one goal here is to put the players in a comfort zone that they can go out-execute their opponent, because we will do this every single day in our practice time. We will do it in the off season, and we will do it in 7-on-7. And we just stand back and let the quarterback and the players go play. I believe there comes a point in time where you have to trust your players and that they will reciprocate that trust by executing at a high level, because they know you're trusting them to know what to do and trust their ability to get the job done. So we send them out. We know we call Rangers. They know that it's 3, 4, 5. After we've gotten to 5, we go back to 3, 4, 5. Think about how easy it is for the offensive linemen. They're simply going to pass protect the whole time. They can lock their mind in onto one assignment, one job, and do and execute it at a high level, okay? So We've given ourselves, by picking empty in these scenarios, easy reads for the quarterback with coverage. We've made the quarterback a viable run threat, and then we've given our players a chance to out-execute their opponent by doing skills against players that don't normally do them, and by doing skills against coverages that give them a 2-on-2 or a 3-on-3 matchup. So we put ourselves in a position in this 2-minute drive or our last 3 plays where we don't have to think at all. We can just go out and out-execute our opponent. And we've had a lot of success doing this by simply turning the process over to the players, being comfortable, but that's exactly what we want to do, and explaining to them how we can give them an advantage of out-executing and winning the game using our Rangers and using the philosophy that I've just articulated. We'll take a look now at some video of us running these 3 plays in a scenario where it's the last drive, the last 3 plays, or a 2-minute drive, so you can see how we've been able to execute in those scenarios. If you're interested in the plays that I used, I've written a whole book on the last 3 plays with regard to explaining in detail what I do and how I coach these plays. But I'll give you a brief overview. In our 3 route, we're going to have the X run a comeback, the A run a fade, and then the B is going to run a shallow cross or a slant. And the reason I call it shallow or slant is if he gets a defender that's playing up tight on him, that he's not going to take any stem. He's simply going to turn and run across underneath all the linebackers. If he gets a defender that's 5 yards off and we feel like he's going to spot drop, then he'll take 3 steps with his inside foot up in his stance, 3 steps and come straight across. And what that does is that holds that defender who might spot drop, okay? So that's why it's shallow or slant. The Z is going to run a 7-step post, and the W is going to run a 5-step hitch. So that's the route tree that we have for that. On the 4 route, the X will run a 7-step post. The A has the shallow / slant. The B runs an arrow out. And what I mean by that is his inside foot up, his first step is going to point to a place 6 yards down on the sideline, and he's going to run straight to that. And he's trying to influence this underneath coverage who might be looking at him for his read to stay flat and to possibly run with him to open up that Z in. So the Z's running what I call an in route. You might call it a curl, but it's going to be 7 steps and turn in, which is going to put him at 10 yards. The reason I don't call it a curl is I don't want him running a circle at the top of his route. I want him to plant his foot and put it in the ground and come straight back down the stem. I don't want him running that little hook or curl route. And the reason I don't is if this quarterback gets pressure and has to throw it early, I want him to know that he can throw it at the receiver's back before he's turned, and he'll turn right around and it'll hit him right in the chest. If you run this little curl route, then what happens is sometimes they run it maybe a little wide or a little shallow, a little different, and that's when you see the ball either behind or in front of a receiver. So I don't run the curl route, I run what I call an in route. And then the W would have a takeoff. Now, the takeoff for us means if there's a defender playing outside of you, or you're going to try to inside release and then run up the field seam into a fade versus any defender. However, if he gets cover 3 in this case, he's just going to convert that into a fade and he's going to run deep. But that's a deep route for us. In the 5 route, the X has a speed out, the A has a 7-step post, and this speed out is a 2-step speed out. He's going to round and run to 5 yards. The B's running a 5-step hitch, okay? The Z's running a fade. He's going to outside release, get width, and run a fade down a hash, and then the W runs a speed out. So we have routes that allow us to work our short to deep progression and give our quarterback an opportunity to find completions and do a good job in this scenario. One of the positive things that I discovered when I first installed this type of system for these scenarios is that the players got real good at it, they got comfortable at it, and allowed me to use it during the game at times when I wanted to change the momentum or change the tempo of the game. In other words, let's say it's the second quarter and we're up 14-0, or maybe we're even behind 14-0, and I wanted to change the tempo of the game. I would use this Rangers, which they knew what to do, as I've articulated, and I would just use that in the middle of the game. And what I found was that if the defense wasn't prepared for that in the middle of the game, see, they might be prepared for it when it's 2-minute drive with the last 3 plays because they know that what you have to do in those scenarios. But if all of a sudden it's the middle of the second quarter and you're up 14 or down 14, and you go to Rangers, you can switch the momentum of the game and you can make their coaches and their players a little bit nervous on the fact that, hey, they just came out, went no huddle, and went right down the field running the same plays over and over again. And so I've done that on numerous occasions and changed the tempo, or I've added pressure to them. Like if I'm up 14-0 and I feel like I have an opportunity just to confuse, but also to put this game a little farther out of reach, I'll just yell Rangers. And what I've seen is that the players get excited about that because they understand why I'm doing it and what's about to happen. And that I'm going to trust them, that we are going to step on the gas pedal and we're going to do what we do best. And they know exactly where the ball's going to go and how we're going to attack our opponent to change the tempo or the momentum of the game. So you might be wondering that how I came up with the thoughts of using 3 plays with regard to these scenarios. And I got them from listening to a clinic lecture from Coach Bill Walsh, who talked about a scenario when he was the offensive coordinator at the Cincinnati Bengals. And they were playing the Raiders in Oakland at that time, and he was calling the plays from the press box, and the press box was open to the stands. And they got in this situation where there was a minute left, and he had to call the plays. And the Oakland fans knew that where he was sitting, and they knew what was happening. And he describes the situation of he's trying to call the plays, and the Oakland fans are throwing stuff in the press box at him to distract him. And he didn't call really good plays, and they didn't win the game. And on the plane ride on the way home, he analyzed himself and say, I didn't do a good job of putting the players first and putting them in a position because of what was happening. And he felt like that he could do a better job if he trusted the players in those scenarios, and just came up with his last 3 plays that they would execute over and over again. And it would be one of these 3 plays that they would use. Now in his scenario, he didn't necessarily go in order, but the quarterback had 3 plays to pick from, and everybody knew those plays. So I thought that was a really great idea that he had, because trying to pick the perfect plays in these scenarios as a play caller, with everything that you have to gain and or lose in terms of the situation, that it was a lot better to make your players comfortable and just simply go with the philosophy of out-executing your opponent. To do that, you have to pick a formation that you can coach your quarterback and your players with regard to how it's going to take advantage of the defense. It doesn't have to be empty. You can pick twins pro, you can pick a wing T formation, but putting the players in a comfortable position with a formation they know, with plays they know, in my experience, has given us an opportunity and will give you an opportunity to out-execute your opponent in these critical situations, because you'll require your players to think less, you'll allow them to be more aggressive, because when they don't think, they get to be more aggressive, and you're going to get a higher level of execution and results when you take advantage of just giving them a format for these scenarios when the game is most crucial for them to win.